Should we start with the NHS and the rather rapid change of mind in the NHS over the course of yesterday morning about whether the report, the internal inquiry into what happened in the NHS with Calocane should be published?
Yeah, this is Valdo Calocane, who is a paranoid schizophrenic, killed 3 people in Nottingham. The review was going to be a summary.
Yeah.
And there was an absolute outrage amongst the families. They had seen hundreds of pages of the review and said it's absolutely vital and in the public interest that everybody sees this, because the results were desperate. Apparently, NHS workers were warned to visit him in pairs and have a clear exit because he was so prone to aggression. He had a history of violence. He refused to take his medication, in some cases because he said he was afraid of needles. Yeah. And so that was accepted. Emma Webber, who's the mum of Barnaby Webber, the 19-year-old student, Nottingham University, was one of those who was murdered, said that she'd read that he'd been sectioned
4 times.
4 times.
4 times.
Well, how was he able to be out and able to kill those 3 people on that desperate night? Well, apparently, according to the review, he was discharged because he was no longer engaging with staff.
He'd been on holiday. They wrote to him, "Are you still on holiday? Hope you're having a nice time." Oh, that's very reassuring. When are you coming back to take your medication? No more engagement than this or no more of him. No. And then no more engagement with him for about another year. And then he goes on. He was a ticking time bomb. His own family had said a ticking time bomb. He'd been violent towards a police officer. There were 15 recorded incidents of violence. This is a spectacular failing here. And you think, is that why the NHS didn't want the report published?
Well, look,
I'm sorry.
You said earlier that the families, there's Barnaby, Gracie, 3 families have lost loved ones. It's exhausting for them. Why are they forever having to fight the process, officialdom? It's the NHS, it's the police, it's the legal system. I mean, they've got enough on their plate trying to cope with the loss of their loved ones. But if somebody's not engaging with mental health services, with their record, you would have thought it's almost the imperative is you must engage with them. You must make them engage. And if not, you must take them into care. Yeah. Now, of course, decisions are made because they don't have the beds. They don't have the care. The mental health services are on their knees, massively overstretched, and you get fatal errors, which has happened in this case. And as for not publishing the full report, I accept privacy in medical cases. Absolutely. It's your starting point, but not where you've had somebody kill 3 people, and a lot of his defence, so he's not found guilty of murder, is his medical history, and it's heard in court. The family should not have had to fight to get this report.
In fact, yesterday morning we had the Health Minister on at the point where NHS England said, we're not publishing the full report. So I asked the Health Minister, why not? And the public interest trumps the medical confidentiality of the convicted killer.
Well, I don't think we should talk about trumping things in a dialogue like this. I think it's important that we are transparent about treatment.
One right has to be preeminent, doesn't it? Either the public interest or the individual rights of the killer.
The overall interest has to be that we learn lessons from things that go badly wrong in the health service.
To be published.
And that the families have reassurance that all lessons have been learned and the same thing doesn't happen to other people.
You can hear the thought process of the minister there. I mean, there is a problem here. And, in the modern world of data, of course it's important to protect people's privacy. And you don't want your medical health records being put into the public domain if you're an ordinary citizen. But there's a balance to be struck. And I think officialdom has got into an assumption because of our new legislation that you always go for the individual, but the public interest doesn't always support that. And in this case, where the guy's been convicted, it's clearly in the public interest for this to be in the public domain. And you could see the minister, by the end of the interview, she's concluded that's right.
And within a couple of hours of that interview, the report,
because
they
he's
agreed
not
to
an ordinary
publish the
citizen
report.
here. He's a savage killer. And his own family took part in a documentary about him, which the families of the victims weren't consulted about, in which they talked openly about his medication.
But there is a wider issue here, isn't there? And in a very different way, we were discussing, last week and the week before, the terrible killing in Southport. And in both cases, in the case of Southport, there is to be an inquiry. At the moment, the families here are calling for inquiry. It's not yet been agreed to. But something happens where you have somebody in the community who is clearly threatening, comes before the authorities, the health service, the police, in the school or family, and there's worry and there's fear, but it's not gripped. And there's not an individual overall across police, NHS, whatever, saying, are we on this? And it feels as though, when you read these reports, that people just hope that it would all be OK, but nobody really gripped and led it. And so I have to say, you can't have a public inquiry into every terrible case, but when the case throws up systemic failings, that's when you need an inquiry. Yeah. Actually, the parents' call for an inquiry in this case is, I think, really strong now.
I think so. Yeah. I remember he's in a hospital as well, and part of the case was that his mental illness, he didn't know about the importance of the drugs. This says he did know about the drugs, that he did know if he didn't take the drugs that it was going to make him more unstable. So that even challenges the reason which he's in a hospital as opposed to in prison, where he could be potentially subjected to the whole life sentences.
The sentencing is after the fact. The issue is, should this have been prevented in the first place?
Oh, sure.
Yes, it could have been. But anybody who comes up against mental health services will tell you that the staff are absolutely stretched close to breaking point. They know they're making decisions that are going to badly affect whoever it is. Now, most people who have mental issues, mental health problems, are nowhere near him. They're not a danger to us. They're often a danger to themselves and terrible impact on their families. But they can't get treatment. And then you get people like him, who is a threat, and they're making decisions, and they're making decisions they're not comfortable with. And until we resource mental health services properly, this is going to continue. We can have as many inquiries as we like, and I agree. I think there is a strong case for an inquiry here. But unless there are the resources at the end of that inquiry to put into action whatever is recommendation, I'm afraid it's going to happen again.
The other thing, just to say, we are now talking in detail about the NHS because they've published a report. We still have heard nothing from the police. We know there were multiple failings. Police have referred themselves for independent inquiry. Every time we ask to talk to somebody from Nottinghamshire Police, they refuse to come on.
Because there's an inquiry.
But that is hiding behind accountability and learning. The Chief Constable of Nottinghamshire Police should come on our programme and talk to us about what is happening, when there will be lessons, what her current views are.
Lessons?
Has she already changed things? It is such an abdication of leadership and responsibility.
I agree.
Right, let's talk about something else that's going to concern people this morning, and that is Martin Lewis's warning on energy bills. He is going to be with us after 8 o'clock because, apparently, according to the latest predictions, gas and electricity bills are going to rise again in April. The big energy firms have predicted the energy cap will increase. And Martin Lewis, expert in all of these things, says it is highly likely the cap will be raised, which means that your energy bill will go up. Householders can brace themselves for bills to rise. Can I just read from page 50 of the Labour Party manifesto? We will save families hundreds of pounds on their bills, their energy bills, not just in the short term, but for good. Kevin, when's that going to happen?
4, 5, 6, 10 years. When you get renewable energy, which won't then be subject to international price fluctuations. That's the truth of that. Now, the figures Labour came up were disputed, but you can see if you build wind turbines, I know you don't like them, the electricity is cheaper. If you have solar farms, it's cheaper, and also it's secure.
The thing is, you don't build that renewable in the short term.
No.
But the Labour Party manifesto said, and people will have voted, because energy bills went through the roof, will have voted on the fact that they were going to save families.
£300 was the figure there.
In the short term.
It's how you define short term.
Ed Miliband, the Energy Secretary, who's now Energy Secretary, used a figure of £300 a year.
In 2030?
Well, the suggestion was...
They won't say £300 this year.
No, but they did say in the short term they would save families hundreds of pounds.
And the assumption was that's £300 a year pretty soon off. Now they're saying it may not even be in this Parliament. And there was a throwaway interview with the new boss of GB Energy, this new body they're setting up, talking about savings of... He said it might happen for 20 years.
The problem we have...
20 years.
The problem you have as a consumer, you just pay your supplier a bill. Now, that supplier might be buying electricity that's generated by oil or gas or nuclear or turbines or solar or... I think about 15% of our electricity comes from neighbouring countries on cables under the sea, but you just pay one price. Now, that company might be spending a fortune on gas, but it might be getting cheaper wind power, because wind power is, by and large, cheaper.
But the latest thing Martin is talking about is nothing to do with renewables and wind power.
No, it's just whether or not...
It's all about global energy prices.
Yep.
Right now, it's been a very turbulent few months. All this speculation about Donald Trump, tariffs, stock markets down, energy prices up, oil prices up. That just pushes everything up.
And that is why, if you have renewable energy sources and they're in the UK, they're not subject to international fluctuations. So in the long term, it will be a lot better.
Because then we can control our own energy.
Yes,
we take back control of our energy.
So long as the wind blows.
Yeah.
Sunshine.
That's why you need battery storage.
What's wrong with drill, baby, drill? Get the oil out of the North Sea. What's wrong with that?
But it doesn't come here. It's an international asset. It's not a British asset. So the companies that bring out that oil or gas don't bring it to you in Britain. It's not like that. That's not how the market works.
There's plans for a major new site off of the Scottish shore. It's been blocked by the courts. Is the government going to try and overturn it? Because that would bring a lot of gas coming in.
Susanna Reid said last week that the government's going to start saying yes all the time.
That's all about growth, isn't she? Thousands of jobs.
They're builders, not blockers.
Or is it going to be green, eco, Ed Miliband saying, no, we can't have that?
I think it's a fair bet that when that site is looked at again, it's not the licence, it's how decisions were made, the government will give it a big tick. Because they said they would honour existing licences, and there are two big fields under development.
They probably won't say drill, baby, drill.
No.
Build, baby, build.
Dig, baby, dig.
Very catchy phrase.
What about bins, baby, bins? Over 1 in 10 councils in the UK are now considering reducing their bin collections. I get very exercised about bins.
Everybody does.
Yes.
Everybody does.
3 councils, we've reported this, it's all rubbish to you, Kevin. They're considering changing the rubbish waste collection, that's your black bin, to once every month. And 4 councils are considering changing recycling collection to once every month. It's unhygienic, it stinks, and it attracts rats and foxes if you don't get your bin taken.
It does.
In Bristol, which is green-led, where they're pushing this, they're doing it for 2 reasons. One is they think you'll have less rubbish if you...
it's ridiculous.
And the other is financial. I think 7p, I looked at the figures, a local government association, 7p in every pound you pay in your council tax goes on bin collections and street cleaning. And councils are under huge financial pressure. Labour hasn't given them a load of extra cash after they were squeezed in the Tory years, and that's why they're doing it. No, look, I like weekly bin collections. It's quite simple, they're coming on Tuesday or Thursday, whenever it is, and you just do it every week, and it's cleaner. It's cleaner, more hygienic. I'm absolutely with you.
It's one of the key ways people measure their local council.
Totally.
Your bin collection.
Yeah, how clean your roads are.
It's probably the most important thing.
And potholes.
And potholes, parking, there we are.
And could Susanna have her own bin on the street outside her house for passing people to put their rubbish in?
I like the idea of a bin on the street, because I think if you're outside a school children have snacks, they need somewhere to throw their rubbish.
I'm all for it if we can have less packaging, that's good, so there's less rubbish, but you're right, somewhere to put it.
But
otherwise you increase litter on the pavements, which means street sweepers have more to do and there's more room for the vermin
it's just horrible.
to collect.
They'll pay a price for this at the local elections if they go down this route, because people really will measure it. Their council.
Yeah, but you'll find it's I mentioned the Greens in Bristol, but you'll find Labour, Lib Dem and Tory councils, and even some independent councils, are all trying to cut back.
It's going to save millions if they cut down on bin collections.
You do get used to it a bit, don't you? I mean, we've gone from weekly to 1 week black bins, 1 week recycling. So actually your black bin is only collected every 2 weeks. And in the end, it's OK.
The foxes get used to it most of all because
4
they have
weeks
an
is
absolute
terrible.
field day.
4 weeks is
they have
terrible.
An absolute field day.
But they don't normally go through the...
scattered all over the streets.
They don't go through the black bin, as it were. They want food. That's what they want.
How do you compare that to this, Andrew? The Telegraph reveals this morning that councils are spending millions to host new arrivals, asylum seekers and refugees, and giving them taxpayer-funded PlayStations and DJ lessons.
What?
Newcomers in hotels have been provided with game consoles and yoga classes paid for by the public purse, with funding also being used to get them driving lessons, tickets to football matches
very nice.
and instruction in circus skills. This has cost £141 million in the last 2 years on these extra initiatives.
Well, circus skills, you tend to think, which clowns have come up with this mad policy? If they can afford to cross the channel, paying thousands, they can pay for their own... They can pay for their own
millions on PlayStation.
Games
and how many billions are we spending on the actual hotel accommodation?
Yeah.
Too many.
And that comes... Doesn't that
8.5 million, isn't 8.5 million a day? This will enrage people.
Right, this is in the... I know, and that's what it's intended to do.
Who can't afford to buy a console. It's intended. But these migrants get
if it's in the Telegraph, I'm just going to... Just a little note of caution here, because last Thursday they had a headline which had some huge figure on shoes and clothes that were giving to people who were picked up coming off the channel. It was a huge figure, and I had it in millions. If you read right through it, it was averaging like £34 per person. Now, if you come wet and you're dirty and everything, what you're going to do? We give more to prisoners in jail. You've got to be very careful because it's all intended to incite and be inflammatory.
Why are we giving them anything? Why are we giving them anything?
What, you're going to pick somebody up off a boat and they're wet. You're going to leave them shivering with kids.
They've all got their rucksacks.
You're going to leave them...
So the truth is, I mean, isn't it? If you've got all these people arriving, which we should stop, and the government decides to put them into hotels in local towns, which has been happening for the last few years, costing billions of pounds...
Let's give them driving lessons.
No, hang on. I don't understand driving lessons, but what do? You put these people in this hotel, do they just sit there? Do they go walking around the town? I have to say, if I was a local council official and somebody said to me, what are you going to do? I think I'd say, I'd put a PlayStation in.
No,
because actually it's something for people to do rather than walking around the town
I put some
all
of these
day and all night.
so-called officials that this government's employing into these hotels to process their application and then kick them out if they're not meant to be here.
That would be a good idea. But
well, of course, your lot didn't.
No, but
you're allowed to process them now.
This lot know how to do it. They're going to show us. First of all, they were going to smash the gangs. They were going to get thousands of people to process the application.
They weren't being processed.
Rather than give them...
They were just playing on the PlayStation.
Rather than teach them circus skills, good God, what that ever means, no idea, driving lessons and PlayStations, process their applications and kick them out.
OK, let's
talk... create a false picture.
Let's talk about somebody else and whether they're allowed to legally be in a certain country, and that's Prince Harry. Because the American think tank, the Heritage Foundation, has asked how on earth he was allowed to get his visa to the US in 2020, having admitted in Spare, which I keep a copy of.
You can see it's really annotated there.
With
Look
all
at
the
that.
annotations. He admitted to taking cocaine, marijuana and psychedelic mushrooms.
Right.
Now, Heritage Foundation says he either lied then on his visa application, because presumably taking drugs, admitting to it, would mean that you weren't allowed to go into the US.
No, I think you have to be convicted.
Or he's been given special treatment by the Joe Biden administration in order to get in. So you say only a conviction would exclude you.
On your visa form, it doesn't say, I've filled out loads of them, it doesn't have a box which says, have you taken cocaine? It says, have you been convicted of a drugs offence, doesn't it?
Not according to the Heritage Foundation, admitting that you
took them.
They've gone through
it quite a lot of lengths.
Yeah.
It's quite a hard right group which hates him because of his
on the
views.
visa
on the visa application, that you must, by law, declare whether you have taken drugs.
How interesting.
Are you going to have to reconsider your visa application?
Luckily, this issue never arose. Because I have never, ever taken an illegal drug in my life of any sort.
Well, but Harry literally wrote a confession.
He did.
He did.
He's in a bit of trouble. And while he might have had some sympathy with Biden, no sympathy with Trump, who can't stand him and Meghan.
Well, if you have to declare you've taken it, he's bang to right.
That book was an international bestseller, made him a fortune, got his point across, but it's caused him no end of trouble.
Is it going to see him kicked out of the US, do you think, likely or unlikely?
I think
unlikely.
I think Trump's got more important fish to fry.
Yeah.
But he likes to bully him.
Finally, before we let you go, you are always in bright and early, stimulating debate and conversation. Is everything better in the morning? I sometimes see you on other programmes late at night. You're not the same. You're much brighter.
That's because he's not on with me.
I'm very...
that's what it is.
No, I often see Kevin when I arrive at 4:30 in the morning. You come into the studio and you see on the TV Kevin from the night before on Sky. And at night, he always looks...
No, never. You're half asleep, Kevin.
You've got to be a lark or an owl.
Yes.
Isn't it? And I think the mornings are the best part of the day.
So do I.
I really do. Get up for work now. Come on, Good Morning Britain. But when I'm not working, I still wake up and I just like to get out. The air is fresh. The only problem about the mornings
for me is him.
No, your problem's when Matron doesn't turn up and get you out of bed.
The honest truth with Andrew is he doesn't really know whether this is still
the night
last night or whether it's tomorrow morning.
Unfair.
Well,
I've seen him a few times on this programme, worse for wear at party concerts.
We think it's been a long night, Andrew.
That's a slur. I haven't had a drink for 5 days.
We get 2 bites of the cherry this morning, of course, because you're back before 9 o'clock, so we will see you then.